truth is, Dabo Swinney has a point about this. And really, I think Mac Brown does. I think Mike Norvell would support this. I think Brent Venables, Deion Sanders, Ryan Day are all on the same road, the same playbook, whatever you want to call it. They're all on the same page with this. I did not think that we would get to a place where I feel I need to tell you that I'm with Dabo on this one, because that's not generally how it goes. And Clemson fans and we got a thing, but I want to squash that. And I want to squash that with this in particular, because I think you got a point about leaving the ACC. I think Florida State got a point about leaving the ACC. I think it's going to be difficult for both of you to do it, but I think if you can get it done, I understand why you would want to do that. And while you might not get the SEC invite, you might not get the Big Ten invite, you probably would get a Big 12 invite. I think the best thing for y'all to do is to go independent, and then you could really play the kind of schedule that you want to play each and every year and still probably make the 12-team playoff, because at this point, Florida State and Clemson have as much gravitas as Notre Dame when we're talking about selection for the college football playoff. Liberty needed to join Conference USA so that they could get to the Fiesta Bowl last year. Y'all ain't got to do that. We know who Florida State is. We know who Clemson is. And one of the reasons we know who Clemson is because Dabo Swinney has built a program there that has won national championships and put together one of the greatest college football teams of all time in 2018 when Trevor Lawrence came off the bench as a freshman to finish the season undefeated. That defense is one of the greatest defenses that we've ever seen. And Brent Venables, of course, was coordinating it. He's the head coach at Oklahoma. You heard about the House versus NCAA settlement, and there's about $2.8 billion that's going to be distributed in that thing. For perspective here, ESPN's paying 2.5 times that for the rights to the college football playoff. So it's really not that much money in the grand scheme of things, especially as college football continues to go up in value, and we are more interested in it than we've ever been before. You can ask any other of your sports fans. They know that college football is right there underneath the NFL, and the NBA is having a hard time keeping up. Major League Baseball, it's about September and October for them. It's really become our second sport behind the NFL because we love football. But we love college football in a way that we don't love pro football because of a couple of things. One is you have a tie to the university that you support, to the program you support. You probably inherited this from a parent who went to that school, who raised you to watch that football game, and then you go to that school, or football team, and then you go to that school. But one of the ways in which you get to live this dream out of playing college football is walking on. Walk-ons are sacred in college football. They have always been sacred in college football. They were sacred before we had scholarships because you would recruit people to play for your football team, and then you have people that showed up because they just want to be a part of the football team. That was a walk-on. So when we came up with scholarships and then scholarship limits, you could only give so many scholarships because of financial incentives. And the rest, basically, if you came out and a coach thought you were good enough and you were not going to get yourself hurt out there, he was going to let you join the team. As a matter of fact, it's one of those things that I really love about Remember the Titans is Herman Boone, who is a mean cuss by his own admission, would say, look, I'm never going to cut a player that comes out to play for me. That's how Dabo rolls, right? That ethos right there. I'm going to let you play. You might not start. You might not see any game time, but you can be a part of this football team. That might go away because we're at a space where the money is the money. But an increase in scholarships, like the cap on scholarships from 85, what it is now, to say 105 or 110, is good. But one of the reasons you're going to cap that and just have scholarships there is because you don't want to have to pay for scholarships in perpetuity. Also means that you would not be allowed to have walk-ons on your football team because the total roster cap would be in place here, which means you can't really reserve any spots if you don't want to for walk-ons, right? Like everybody's going to be on scholarship or they're not going to be on the football team. That's the way that this is drawn up. And I thought a couple of things were important here. Mac Brown made the point that there's a trustee at North Carolina, at Chapel Hill, who's got a couple of sons on North Carolina's football team, and they're walk-ons, right? Tells you all you need to know about how good or not good they are. But Mac had said, look, it's going to be really difficult for me to have to tell him and his family they can't play football for us anymore come January when this thing goes through. That's tough, man. It's also tough because it puts the game at risk, like actually playing the game. The reason I say that is take a look at Florida State last year in the Orange Bowl. After they had a bevy of opt-outs because they didn't make the college football playoff and they had a bunch of guys that were expected to go into the NFL draft and didn't want to risk it getting hurt in the bowl game, they would have been 20 short of being able to field a football team. Like, they would have had to capitulate. They would have had to forfeit the game. A New Year's Six bowl game, they would have had to forfeit it because they didn't have enough players. That's what you're risking here, right? You're risking not being able to play the sport. You're also putting at risk one of the things that everybody in this sport agrees is cool, man. I most of the time when we're talking, right, we're having these conversations, we're talking about one side or the other. Like, Ohio State fans believe I'm talking too much about Michigan. Michigan fans believe I'm talking too much about Ohio State. Oklahoma fans believe I'm not talking enough about them. But on this, I don't think you're going to find anybody that says, to hell with walk-ons. That's not what we're going to do. That's not what the Burlsworth Trophy. My gosh. Thinking about Arkansas. That trophy is also sacred, and it has revealed some really awesome players and at least one Heisman Trophy winner. Like, Baker Mayfield walked on at Texas Tech. Walked on, right? And ended up the starter. Then he left, walked on at Oklahoma, was a Heisman finalist 3 times, and won the damn thing. As a walk-on. That's a remarkable story. And you have all sorts of remarkable stories that come from walking on. Hunter Renfrow at Clemson, a guy that walked on and has been one of the better slot receivers in the NFL because he just needed a shot, needed an opportunity. It's also the thing, right? Talented guys fall through the cracks all the time because we're really good at making football players that some of the guys don't even come to our attention until they get to college because some position coach goes, that dude just keeps making plays, you know? Gavin Freeman is another example of this for me at Oklahoma. And I can keep going down the list on this because there's just been so many. But Dabo himself can speak from a personal experience that I think is worthwhile and worth bringing up here. For those that don't know, Clemson fans, I apologize. You know this already. Dabo walked on at wide receiver at Alabama, playing for Gene Stallings. He wasn't that good. He wasn't that good. And Gene Stallings said, you know what? I think I'm going to put you on scholarship the last 2 years, so you're good enough, right? But Gene Stallings is also the guy that goes, you should probably become a football coach. And at the time, Dabo was like, I don't think I'm going to do that. And I think that's really cool because Dabo is who he is now. But Nick Saban had a similar thing happen to him. At Kent State, he was going to leave Kent State and he was going to go sell cars because, believe it or not, Nick Saban, great car salesman. Go to his dealership for Mercedes in Birmingham if you don't believe me. But he had a wife that was in college, and he was convinced to take a grad assistantship, and that's all she wrote, right? Like, it's that. Sometimes the way in which you find your way to the sport or you find your way to doing what the world believes that you can do better than most is just by showing up. And walking on is a way in which we get to show up. It is a way in which you get to say, I'm here. I'm doing everything that I can because I say this and I mean it. There are 3 things that get you jobs. Be on time, be good at your job, have people like you. You don't need all 3. You just need 2 of the 3. You can't have 1 of the 3. You need 2 of the 3. So if you're on time and people like you, you can be so-so at your job. If you're really good at your job and you're on time, people ain't got to like you. You know what I'm saying here? And that's across the board. You learn that from walk-ons. But the last thing I wanted to say about walk-ons in particular here, walk-ons protect the legacy of the program. Usually if you're walking on, preferred walk-on too, but usually if you're walking on, you have history with that university, with that football program, and you are able to educate the guy that picked out Oklahoma from Notre Dame, LSU, Ohio State, and Texas, who's from California. He picked the best option for himself. That's not necessarily the same as somebody who's going, I was only going to Oklahoma because I always want to play at Oklahoma. And then you get to infuse that into the talent ahead of you. And you get to help them understand the culture. You get to help them appreciate what it is that they have been entrusted with. In many ways, walk-ons are our standard bearers. They are our heralds. They are the guys that we know are going to go tell the stories. Those are the guys that protect your legacy, protect your heritage. What does it say about college football that we might not have them?